Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us for this new Twinmotion webinar. Today we'll be having a look at the new features introduced in Twinmotion 2022.2. The first main feature is the integration of the Sketchfab library. Indeed, if I open my library on the left, here we have that new folder Sketchfab that contains around 700,000 new assets, which is quite huge. Let's have a look at some of those folders. Here in the architecture folder, I will find plenty of architecture-related objects. At the top here, I have the object I already downloaded. So that's why they are placed at the top. And if I start to scroll down, at some point I will find objects that I didn't download. And you can see in the top right corner of the thumbnail, you have that download icon. Those assets are not installed locally on your machine, since that library is so huge. Those assets are available on the cloud and available on demand. If you want to download an asset, so for example, let's come to my car and vehicles folder here. Let's say I would like to add maybe that trailer here. If I want to add that object to my project, I will need to click on that download button. But right now, it tells me, please sign in to download. If you are launching Twinmotion through the Epic Games launcher, you will be automatically signed in. Otherwise, you can click on that burger menu here and click on Sign in to Epic Games. On Sign in here, that icon will turn white and I can now click on it to download that object. As you can see here, you have that wheel that will start to spin, that will start to fill until the download is complete. So right now, I'm downloading the raw data of that specific object. Once done, I can now drag and drop that object in my scene. As you can see here, you don't see the object right away. It's because there is a small processing time. We are actually converting the raw data inside into a Twinmotion object. So here I just imported that trailer, and I can use all the different tools inside Twinmotion to move it around. I can also switch to the scale tool to make it a bit bigger. Can choose the move tool to make it just enter a bit the ground. Something like that. Keep in mind that the Sketchfab library is a library of assets created by the community, unlike the assets that are natively present inside Twinmotion or the Quixel Megascan assets. All of that are created in-house by the Epic Games team. The Sketchfab library is a library created by the user, by the community. So for example, here that trailer has been created by Aliona Sheck. And I need to credit the author of that specific object when I'm using that object inside one of my scenes. The easiest way to get the credit of the object you are using will be to select it in the library and click on Open in Sketchfab. Once you've opened that object in Sketchfab, you can click on the Download 3D Model button that will give you the option to copy the credit line. Also, when you are inside Twinmotion, if you click on the object, open the scene graph, here you can find the name of the object. And if here I'm switching to the metadata, I can find the author and the license. So that trailer has been created by Aliona Sheck and is under the license CC attribution. The Sketchfab content will act as any other Twinmotion asset. So for example here, let me maybe add that motorcycle in front of that gas station. If I want to customize that as any other Twinmotion asset, I can change the material. So for example, here, let me get out of the path tracer. I will select my color picker. I will pick that material of that motorcycle. And for example, here I can change the color, I can change the reflection, maybe turn on the metalness to have something a bit more chromy. I can even replace material directly using Twinmotion materials. Look, so here, for example, that slightly worn chrome should work pretty good on that part. And here we could have a dark brushed aluminum there. Checking how it looks in Path Tracer, and it looks pretty cool. Maybe just a rubber for the wheels. One of the limitations of the Sketchfab library is that when you place an object, that object is collapsed as one single mesh. So for example, if I come here and let me, for example, try to look for a cartoon object in the car and vehicle folder. I will scroll down until I found something like that. Let's download that for low poly Toon City cars. Let me also turn the camera so we have some more space to place them in the project. I placed my 4 objects, but as I said, one of the limitations is that those 4 objects are collapsed as one single mesh. So for example, here as you can see in the same graph, there is no hierarchy. I can't just select the ambulance. To do that, what I can also do is select the object in the library, click on Open in Sketchfab, and what I will do is actually download that object directly from the Sketchfab website and import it as a GLTF file, which is also one of the new features of Twinmotion 2022.2. So let's do that. So now that I am in Sketchfab, I have the object that you can see here. I will click on Download 3D model, and I'm going to download that as a GLTF file. My object has just been downloaded, so what I will do is first remove that one from my viewport. I'm going to come to my import doc, click on import, and I will search for my GLTF file. Selecting it, I'm going to keep the hierarchy because I want to have a look at the hierarchy set up by the artist. Hopefully, he won't have collapsed the whole set of objects directly in its original file, because indeed, I don't have any control on how everyone is creating their objects. So let's select Keep Hierarchy, and I'm going to click on Import. Those objects has been imported in the center of the Twinmotion world. So what I can do is select them in the scene graph and press F to move the camera to there. What I can do also is press Shift and click somewhere in front of me to bring those assets over here. So now let's have a look at the hierarchy. I just expanded that folder, and indeed, as you can see here, there are many different folders here. Here, for example, I can find there is a prefab car sedan. It's probably just that green one. So let's maybe just do that. I'm going to collapse all the different folders so we can better see. So here we have the ambulance, we have the car hatchback, and the police one too. So what I could also do now is just right-click on that object, save it inside my user library so I can use that single car on any future project. And here, if I'm coming out of my Sketchfab library and entering at the bottom my user library, here as you can see now, I have that single car. For the next feature, I'm switching to that scene that you may have saw in one of our previous trailers. It's our Marina Landmark project. I just switched to that project to show you the new high-resolution tile rendering feature. To activate that option, you will need first to create an image. So we click on Media, Image. I'm going to click on the plus to create a new image. In that image, I will click on the More and enter the Format option. Here I can choose the format of that specific image. What is new is that new tile rendering option. When you enable that option, you can render images up to 64K resolution. So that's pretty huge and can be really helpful when you want to print your image on a large screen or a large poster that could be displayed inside a city. So here, when you turn this option on, here you can tap up to 64K. The tile rendering method of rendering will actually divide that image in smaller images, and it will calculate all those images one by one, and at the end it will paste all those images together into that really large image. That rendering could take some time. First you need to render all those images, then you need to put them all together into that single image, and then you also need to save that image on your disk. As an example, last time I used that feature, it was on a 30 by 20K images and the file size was just around 1 gigabyte. So it's quite a large file that you are dealing with when using that option, the tile rendering option. The next feature on the list is the HDRI background. If I click here on the settings, lighting, we now have 3 different ways to light the scene. You have the dynamic sky, which allow you to play with the weather and season and time of day in real time. You have the HDRI, the skylight HDRI that allow you to load any kind of HDRI texture on your sky that create basically a sphere that will enlighten your project. And now we have that new option, the backdrop HDRI. When you turn that option on, it will basically create an half sphere where you can place object on top. So for example, here in that specific example, I have my HDRI texture that is mapped onto that half sphere. I placed some rocks on the bottom part of my HDRI backdrop, and I placed my object, my ATV, on top of those rocks. So in the more of my HDRI, I have plenty of settings like customizing the rotation, customizing the size of that half sphere, customizing the projection of that texture on this sphere. So there are a lot of options to customize deeply your HDRI backdrop. In addition to that, we have added in the Twinmotion library more than 200 new HDRI. These are divided in 3 different folders. We already had the sky in the past divided in a different category, but what's new is the indoor library. Here you will find many indoor texture. You will find interior of a mall or hotel room, of an ancient scene like that, or a parking garage. In the exterior, in the outdoor folder, you will find many HDRI exterior with roads, with asphalt, with grass, and with some rocks. Here, for example, we are using the Kaira Noon HDRI. Finally, in the Studio folder, you will find abstract HDRI created by hand that will mimic a studio lighting type of setup. Especially useful when you want to visualize smaller objects. For that next scene, I'm actually using one of those interior HDRI, and here I'm using the bathroom one. That HDRI is the only source of light inside my project, so if I remove completely the intensity, as you can see, we don't see anything else. Right now I have a pretty cool lighting, but let's have a look at another one. For example, here I can drag and drop that veranda HDRI either in my viewport or in the box down below. So here, as you can see, the HDRI completely changed the lighting of your scene. Here, the lighting now is coming from the left here, from that big opening on my veranda. And that is way more colder. Let's have a look maybe now at the Le Bombo one. That one feels way more warmer. As you can see here, the HDRI controls the temperature of the light, but also where it's coming from. I jumped to that scene to show you one of the new features, which is the physics-based asset placement tool, which is a feature in early access. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually select one of the pieces of my chessboard here. That chessboard is actually coming from Sketchfab. And to retrieve the hierarchy of all those chess pieces, I downloaded that object in a GLTF file. The new feature, the new physics asset placement tool, can be found in the toolbar here. If I open my toolbar, I can click on the gravity tool to make that object actually fall. Here, let's select multiple pieces. I will select everything that is in my pieces folder. All my pieces are selected, as you can see here. So now what I can do is move them all in the air, maybe give them a slight rotation, and press the physics option to make them fall. So that's the gravity tool. The second tool that comes with this option is the move with collision. When you turn this option on, when you start to move objects, they will collide and they will be stopped by some geometry. So for example here, all those black pieces are stopped by that simple mug. If I start now to move in that direction, some of those Y pieces will be stuck against the mug. And now they will be stuck against that chair. So that feature is especially useful if you want to make sure that your furniture inside your house won't be colliding with your wall, for example. Also, when doing rotation, you can do some pretty cool stuff with that tool. And at the end, you can always activate the gravity to make everything fall nicely on the ground. The next feature is the ability to import light coming from a datasmith scene. To do that, I will click on the import and I will look for my file. Here I will import that project in Keep Hierarchy, and here we have some new options regarding the light settings. The Use Original option will use the value of the light set up in your CAD software. The Set Intensity to 300 lumen will set all the light at the import to that value of intensity. And finally, the Set All value to the Twinmotion default one will take all the light at the import and set their intensity at the default Twinmotion value. I will use the original value and click on Import. My file has just been imported. If I turn around, as you can see here, the light has been imported. That project was actually created in ArchiCAD, but we support also light coming from other sources. Here I can simply now select all my light and play with the settings. Twinmotion Cloud also seen a lot of improvement among the past months. Now Twinmotion Cloud support more complex presentation, meaning that you can have some larger project working on the cloud and streaming in real time to any devices. Also, the Twinmotion Cloud infrastructure now support the motion sensor. So if you are on a tablet or a smartphone, you can use the motion sensor from your device to turn around inside your scene. Jumping back on this project to show you some of the smaller features. First, now you can export your images in various new formats. So if I click on the export dock under the more of images, we used to be able to only export in PNG, but now you can export in PNG, JPEG and EXR. The EXR format will give you the ability to do post-production of your image. What you can also do is export a panorama in EXR format, giving you the ability to use that panorama as an HDRI inside a future Twinmotion scene. In the preference settings unit system, you can also now switch from meters to centimeters and foot to inch, allowing you to work way more precisely, especially when working with smaller scene, like visualizing a headset or a shoe. Also, in the library, we have added that Sketchfab link, which brings 700,000 new assets, which is quite huge, but we are also adding some new Twinmotion assets. It starts with the characters. In the post-human folder, we divided that in many different groups, and actually hundreds of characters has been added since the last major version of Twinmotion. For example, here in the children folder, you will see plenty of children or children with their parents. Same thing if I come to the shopping folder. Here we also have plenty of new type of character there. Same with the sports. In addition to the ready pose character, we are also adding more standard objects. Here I just display some of the new backyard props. You can find them in Object, Home, and at the bottom we have the backyard folder. Here it's divided in 6 different folders: kids game, accessory, chair, sofa, tables, and pool spa. And here I just place a couple of examples just using some basic chairs and tables, just to give you a small taste as what you can expect out of that library. Let's have a look, for example, now at the chairs, and here we have quite a lot of them, starting with some simple deck chair and some more comfy one. Going back in the backyard and entering the tables, here there are also plenty of one, from metal to wood table. Same thing for sofa, here plenty different type of design to populate your backyard or your terrace. In the pool and spa, you will have some inflatable pool, some spa, and some other stuff to populate your scene. Finally, here we have plenty of different small accessories like sunshade, carport, campfires. And the last one is the kids game. And here is just a scene we've built just with, mostly actually with some new Twinmotion assets, except some buildings in the background. Here everything is coming from the Twinmotion native library now. That gives the opportunity to see some assets up close and personal. In addition to these assets, we also have added some new objects in the gym folder. At the top, we have the one installed locally inside Twinmotion, but if you scroll down here, you will have the download button. That means that all those assets are new. We have more than double the number of assets that you have now in the gym folder. And here again, we created a simple scene to showcase some of those assets. Finally, the last group of objects that we have added can be found in the living room folder. Here at the bottom, you can find some entertainment and toys games. In the entertainment, you can find some more modern type of game and some for more adults. So pool table, ping pong table, some joystick, some also consoles. And here in the toys game, it's more toys for some kids. And again, here is just an example of a scene we created to place those assets in. When importing a file, now you can also import multiple files at once. So here, if I click on my import tab, open, that project, for example, contained many .fbx files. In the past, I needed to select one and click on open and do that for every pieces. Now you can simply select all your files at once and click on open. This will load each file one after the other. In that new version, we also have many new improvements regarding the handling on smaller scene. We already talked about the new units. You can also switch to two different new speed, which is the inspect speed and the handle speed. Those two shortcuts are 1 and 2, then you have 3, 4, 5, 6 for the other speed we already used to have. There has been a lot of work also in the transform panel. So for example, here, when I select an object, I can switch from the different channel here using tab. I can also use the arrow key to move up and down. In that panel, you also can now find the size of your object. So for example, here, that piece of furniture, I can find its size over here. I think it will be even look better if I switch to centimeter in that specific case. So here, for example, the size of centimeter is 85 centimeters in height. Finally, one of the last change I wanted to talk in that video is the new breadcrumb in the library. As you can see here, now you can a bit easier find where you are and move to another folder, another previous folder. And I think that's pretty much it for this webinar. If you want to learn more about all the new features introduced in Twinmotion 2022.2, you can have a look at the release note. We also have some dedicated tutorials on some of the main features like the physics tool, the HDRI Backdrop, and the Sketchfab integration. So thank you everyone for watching that webinar with us. If you are live attending the webinar, we'll now switch to the Q&A session. And if you are looking at that webinar recording on our social channels, please leave us your comments in the comment section down below. Thank you everyone.